most of the technical federal education, for example, now is completely free. And government is giving money to some of all these things. Now, if you also look at it in colleges of education, colleges of agriculture, and faculties of education in universities, government is also giving some stipend to people who are studying specific courses to encourage people to participate in those areas. All these are funds that government is spending to oil the wheel of the economy. Now, if you stop those funds, those things will not be coming.
What about the mining sector? I mean, just last week, CBN announced we have about $3.5 billion in gold reserve. We can do better than that. We can do more than that. If we actually look into the mining sector, we are blessed with so much. I mean, lithium right now is what China is using to negotiate. We have that.
This is Souq business landscape.
The Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, has announced plans to raise 850 billion naira through a fresh Nigerian Treasury Bills auction scheduled for March 11, 2026. Now, the planned issuance will pursue the total amount raised within 1 week to about 2 trillion naira, reflecting the government's continued reliance on short-term debt instruments to meet funding needs. Now, according to an official tender notice sent to the primary market dealers, the auction is being conducted by the Abex Bank on behalf of the Debt Management Office, which oversees Nigeria's public debt issuance and management. Treasury bills. What's your thought on this? And how should Nigerians approach this?
Well, like I've always said, government is looking at very creative and innovative way to fund their budget, which is, of course, a major challenge that 2025 faced. Analysts, for example, point to the fact that 2025 was the worst year for Nigeria, as, of course, the government was not able to implement its capital project at all. And that was not because government was deliberate not to implement, but it was the fact that the gap between what was projected and what was realized was a huge one. For example, if you look at the assumptions in the 2025 budget, you saw that government was expecting that they will be able to get revenue from crude oil from between 76 and 82. It was projected at that, but unfortunately, crude did not sell up to that in the year under review. They also estimated that they were going to be able to internally generate or raise completely about 40 trillion in revenue. Unfortunately, what was raised was actually 10 trillion. Now, that's a gap of about 30 trillion.
Yes.
And therefore, government really didn't have enough money for the year 2025 to be able to sustain its budget. But there are basic obligations that, of course, you have to continue to meet, which is, of course, the overhead. The government had to run. Civil servants had to be paid.
Definitely.
Some of the debts that you have taken had to be serviced.
Yes.
If you can get some other things. There should be some payout for dividends or for some of these bonds and treasury bills that have sold in the past. And all of these settlements had to take some money. And so, you see, like they say, it's like you have to rob Peter somehow to pay Paul. Otherwise, there'll be trouble in the economy. And I think that's where the government is. So rather than go to the commercial bank to continue to borrow this money at a very exorbitant interest rate, government is resorting to treasury bill with, of course, more stable interest rate. It may not be as expensive or as low as one would expect. But you see, treasury bill, for example, you're going to pay dividend to people who subscribe maybe between 16 to 18%. So that's far still better than paying 26.7%, which, of course, by the time you put in and factor in management fee and the rest of the hidden charges that come with loan taking, that takes it to about 34%. So government is smart in terms of going always to bond and treasury bill to see how they can raise money from private individuals to fund their budget. And I think that's exactly what it is. And at the end of the day, government is taking money from the individual. And of course, the prospect of individual having money back from government is also high because you have to get interest at the end of every year the number of months that you subscribe. So this for me is creative. It's an innovative way to borrow, to see how to fund your budget in the midst of reducing deficits in terms of funds.
But Doc, isn't this borrowing getting too much? I mean, too much borrowing increases national debt, and definitely high interest increases government expenses.
Well, except that you have to say government should stop what they are doing. And so nobody is working and then the economy is on a standstill.
There was a bond last month. Now there's another one this month.
That's the exact point I'm making. So it's like you say somebody ate last month or received salary last month. Therefore, this month he should not receive another salary. So this is a way to look at it. Yes, government will continue to borrow, like I said. And I think is, again, because of the way we have seen liberal democracy, where, of course, everybody tends to believe that government has become the big father of everybody and therefore had to meet the need of every citizen. So government is putting hands in so many areas where naturally they should not put hand. So you see, we have to find a way to cushion effect in some areas, support local people in some area, vulnerable individuals. We are giving them money and handout here and there to look good in the face of a declining world economy. So that's what government is doing. And so you can't say government stop the social services. And if government stop the social services, it means life is itself coming to an end. So as long as government is going to carry this burden of addressing the need of its citizen, and especially those who are very vulnerable, you will find that government will continue to borrow. Take, for example, in most of the federal unity colleges, you see, government is putting so much fund in there. Most of the technical federal education, for example, now is completely free. And government is giving money to some of all these things. Now, if you also look at it, in colleges of education, colleges of agriculture, and faculties of education in universities, government is also giving some stipend to people who are studying specific courses to encourage people to participate in those areas. All these are funds that government is spending to oil the wheel of the economy. Now, if you stop those funds, those things will not be coming. We're talking about student loan, where, of course, you have to give each student who is participating in that program a minimum of 20,000 means of livelihood every month.
Every month.
Apart from paying the tuition. So all these are continuous everyday spending. And as long as the revenue that we are generating is not matching our expenditure, then the only way to be able to sustain this going forward is you have to resort to borrowing. And that is what it is. So whether government borrows so much or not much is not the issue. But I think what people have to argue today is really how do we increase productivity in most of the sectors so that the revenue that government is getting is shored up to a greater level so that we are not borrowing so much as we currently do. And of course, if we are going to borrow, you see the deficit is not as massive as it is today. That will solve a lot of problems. So government investing in productive activities, things that actually bring more money to the economy, will be a way to go. But as long as government is going to invest in social services, you find that, of course, revenue is not enough to do all this. Then the alternative is to borrow.
Shouldn't we, apart from social services, shouldn't we be looking at investing in projects, infrastructure that would also generate some form of revenue?
Well, I don't know whether it's failure on the part of government. It's almost certain now, and I don't think it's here alone, that government-run businesses hardly prosper. So that's a big problem. And that's why a lot of people are looking at saying government don't have business doing business. Because you look at all the services that government had run in the time past, except for a few ones, none of them is prospering.
But if you look at Dubai, Dubai is doing well.
Yeah, but when you look at Dubai, you see that there's virtually any sector in Dubai that you see government playing key or active role. So the economy is open for businesses to prosper. And so what government provides is basically regulation. Okay. So you don't have government-owned industries or factories. Individuals come in to invest in Dubai. That is what it is. So, and I think that's a point that, of course, government should actually be an arbiter between the have and the have-nots, and see how to moderate competition such that the strong don't swallow up the weak. But today, you see a lot of government investment really hardly prosper. So, take for example, you look at in Nigeria, we used to have an airway that's gone. We used to have shipping line, it's gone. We used to have telecom, it's gone. We used to have electricity distribution, it's gone. And so many things gone because they are not well managed. And rather than actually becoming an asset, they become liability. And every successive government will have to keep pumping in money, trying to whip up a dead horse. So to that extent, you find that it's difficult for us to expect a government who is able to invest in productive activity. But rather, what people are arguing or advocating for is that government creates the enabling environment where private funds and investment can prosper. So that's the much we expect from government. Ensure that there are no multiple taxes. Ensure that basic infrastructures are working and they are running, that the road networks are connecting. Ensure that roads are connecting places so that the movement of goods, services, and people are not cumbersome. And these are the things that, of course, people are expecting from government. And for government to be able to deliver on these social goods, they need more taxes from the people. So it is not government investing, it is the private individual investing. But government create the environment where private fund can be profitable. And once those environments are created, then of course we can have profit. So are there things government need to do from regulatory perspective? Oh yes, there are a lot. So we can take away all the encumbrances around those investments. And if government have excess fund, they can even invest in some of these private initiatives. Take, for example, like Nigeria has about 7.6 or 7.8% in the Dangote refinery.
Yes.
We could have done more and put more money and invest in other private endeavors that are producing wealth so that government can, apart from taxes, also earn money from dividends that is coming from these businesses. But for this dividend to continue to come, therefore, the playing field had to be level in such a way that those who are putting their money are able to get it back. And this, for me, is what the primary role of the government is about. And then, of course, the provision of security for the lives and property of its citizens. So if government concentrates in this area, then, of course, we're going to get more money. But we're also in an environment today where, of course, security is a major and huge challenge, and therefore is requiring heavy investment beyond what we are even earning. And these are all the pressures that government face, that we find that it will be a near miracle to see that government will not be borrowing. So as long as these issues remain and they are not addressed, borrowing will continue to happen.
How do we ensure now that this 850 billion naira in treasury bills are prudently utilized? Because if you borrow money to do some sort of poverty alleviation, are you really empowering the people? And secondly, you said government should be doing supervisory role, regulatory role when it comes to revenue and investment. What about the mining sector? I mean, just last week, CBN announced we have about $3.5 billion in gold reserve. We can do better than that. We can do more than that. If we actually look into the mining sector, we are blessed with so much. I mean, lithium right now is what China is using to negotiate. We have that.
Yeah, I think there's so much that's also happening in the mining sector. And we thank the current Minister for Solid Mineral, who is also trying and pushing boundary to see how we can get private initiative coming to that environment and the quantum of resource that is needed to invest in the mining sector is provided by both foreign and local investors. So we need those investments. But what I'm saying is that not necessarily government investment. Not necessarily government investment. All that government needs to do is to take away all the encumbrances that will make investment frustrating. And once those encumbrances are taken away, then, of course, you see private investors can come in. Government can guarantee some private business people and then, of course, guarantee their investment. if they have so much money to do all of that, and such that I am going to put money in your economy, and I'm saying, okay, put it, we can give you the guarantee. Of course, access to land is also a problem because, of course, how cumbersome it is for people to have access to land is a big problem. Yes, the mineral on the ground belongs to the federal government, but the land upon which the mineral is staying is owned and held in trust by the states. So how do we mediate between the federal and the state such that if there's a mineral deposit in your area, I know that the land belongs to Mr. A, but the state government is holding that land in trust for Mr. A based on the Land Use Act. So we are having to see how do we remove these encumbrances so that when investors are coming, they can have access first to land before you can talk about the investment that come. And how, of course, government is also mediating between the locals and the investors so that the people who have the land upon which this mining is going to take place, that they are actually taken care of and they are not devastated and reduced to poverty while the businessman is making money. So that regulatory framework, the government need to balance up between the investor and the people who own the land. And that is the point exactly that I'm making. So if we have to ensure that there's productivity, then of course, we must look at our laws and see where there are encumbrances. Then the National Assembly work hard to remove those encumbrances so that the inflow of resource into the country can be wide open. So we widen the funnel, a lot of funds will come in, whether it's in the mining, whether it's in the gas sector, whether it's in the petroleum sector, then we can develop it optimally. And then the nation can have the benefit of reaping tax and royalties from some of these investments.